Hey guys, I am Dani and welcome back to Summer Skye Gardens. For anyone who's new here, I live in Spring, Texas and have a flower farm in Splendora, Texas, both of which are kind of right north of Houston. So we're in South Texas, zone 9B, super hot and humid. And this morning I am going to show you guys how to take a soil test, how to fill out the form, and how to interpret the results when they come back. So the field behind me this past year has been my wildflower field, but I'm going to turn it into my U-pick field. Now, when you're planting wildflowers, typically you don't need to worry about the soil as much because wildflowers grow wild. They grow on the side of the highway. So they're not really, picky about having perfectly amended soil. In fact, that can be detrimental to their growth and their flowering. However, if you want to grow, very pristine, superb cut flowers for cut flower production, you do need to do a soil test. You do need to make sure your soil is adequately amended well before you plant. So that's why we're going to come through and do a soil test on this field before I start prepping it to plant it and turn it into my U-pick field for the fall. Now, what are some things that you're going to see on a soil test? And I'll show you guys here shortly the form that I use. You are going to get, your macronutrients, your micronutrients, your pH, and you can add in, organic matter and some other things. There's usually some different choices that you can choose. And you want to make sure you get an adequate sampling of the field that you're going to be using. And you can send it to typically like your local AgriLife Extension or Department of Agriculture Extension office. In Texas, probably the best place I would recommend is Texas A&M. So that's who I send it to. And I'll show you the form that they use that you can send it in. You can also sample water. You can send in plant samples. So there's a lot of things that you can do. But basically for the soil test, we're going to go through and get soil samples from 7 to 10 different spots around your field. You can kind of go in a circular zigzag pattern. And you want to make sure you get soil that's at least 6 inches deep. So let me show you guys. I'm going to be using this tool. This is like a plug planter, and pretty much it goes kind of deep into the soil. So it'll get down deep enough, get a little bit of a sample, and then I'm going to dump it into a bucket. When I'm done with that, I will sift through, and you want to take out as much organic matter as you can. So any like grass, weeds, seeds, anything like that where you're really just left with the dirt. And you want to get about 1 pound of dirt. So by the time you're done with, 7 to 10 sites, you should have well over 1 pound of dirt. And you put it in a Ziploc baggie, label it, and you mail it in, with your form, and then you get back your soil test results. And I have found over the past year of doing this, it's taken anywhere from 1 to 3 weeks. So I would give yourself, do this at least like a good month before you're going to be planting. That way there's plenty of time for you to get your soil test back and then amend your soil once you get it back. So let me turn the camera around and I'll kind of show you real quick how I go through and get the actual soil. And then we will go back in and I will show you the form that I'm going to fill out. And then I'll show you some of my past test results and kind of talk you through what they mean and how you can actually use it. So as you can see, this is a pretty big field. So what I'm going to do is just kind of zigzag down the middle and get at least, like I said, 7 to 10 spots. And since my soil is sandy, usually it's pretty easy to go down within the soil. And like I said, I like using this plug tool because typically, well, of course, now that I say that, it's a little bit harder. But typically I can get down far enough and get a sample. And you want to spread it out around your field. I'm going to lift this back up and then dump it in my bucket and mix it all up when I'm done. And that should get me an adequate sample. So let's speed this up. Okay, so I've got all my soil. I'm well and adequately sweaty from the humidity right now. So let me turn the camera and I'll kind of show you how my bucket looks. So here we got nice sampling of dirt. And like I said, I'm going to try to take out like some of the plant materials, any kind of like roots, you know, grass, because you want to send in as clean a dirt as you can get it. So I can just kind of take out some of this and I will mix it up. And I have at least a pound here, probably several pounds. And this will be ready to put in a Ziploc baggie and mail it in. All right, guys, so I am back at my house. I got my soil sample. It's in a baggie. It's in the envelope ready to be mailed off. But I need to fill out the form to send it off. So I'm going to show you what that looks like using the Texas A&M AgriLife Extension Office. So every form is going to be a little different depending on where you send it. But if you want to use A&M, you can, just so long as you're in the United States and you're able to mail soil out of your state. So let's take a look at that. And then I'm going to show you the soil analysis results, how that looks, how you need to use it. We're going to go online and I'm going to show you a really handy calculator, which I will link below, on how to calculate how much fertilizer you need to buy of different components. And then I'll actually do a calculation for this field. So let's look at the form real quick. So this is the soil sample form that you're going to need to fill out, and you just put in kind of your basic information here, how you're going to pay, if you're going to send a check or pay online, which I typically do. I usually just get my results emailed. I don't need an actual paper. And then if you look down here, this is where you choose what you're actually going to ask for and kind of how much each is. So basic analysis, which is like your pH and your basic macronutrients. You can add in micronutrients, you can add in boron, organic matter, texture analysis, and so on. I typically choose number 4. So it's kind of the routine plus your micronutrients, boron, organic matter, and that comes to $46 per sample. So just depending on what you want to look at is the different pricing. And then down here, your sample ID, you could just put like, oh, production field, you pick field, how big of an area it is, what are you growing? So I usually just put flowers, and then I click, or I check off number 4, and then I leave this blank because I'm not growing a forage. And then I typically make a copy of this for myself, and then I just put this in the envelope with the soil and mail it off. And then we'll get the results back usually between 1 to 3 weeks. I would say, depending on the time of year, you know, usually in the winter is when a lot of people do soil tests. So here in the summer, it'll probably actually come back a lot faster. But that's the form. Let me show you how the soil results actually look. So here is an example of a result page. This was a sample that I took last summer, and it was for my production field. So I did this before I was going to fall plant. So let's zoom in and we can look at the results. Now up here, it'll show you the date and then the square footage that you put in. So that's kind of a good thing to take note. Crop grown, production field, flowers. So when you start, you know, saving a bunch of these, this is how you can kind of tell which one this was from. So here it gives you your pH, conductivity, and then kind of your macro and micronutrients, limestone if you need to add any to adjust your pH, and then your organic matter. You can see here, it'll show you critical lines, so that's where you want to be. So anything that's on the left side, you're going to need to add. Anything that's at the line, you should be okay. They may recommend you add more depending on what you're growing. So it gives you all the results here. And then what I like about the A&M lab is they will come in and recommend your fertilizer rates. So, hey, these are all low, you need to go add these in. If you notice, my pH was pretty acidic. So they're gonna add, or they're recommending that I add limestone at a rate of 10 pounds per 1,000 square feet. And then the organic matter, that's really like what is growing in your soil. So like bacteria and stuff, like healthy things that are growing in your soil. You want this to be between like 5 to 10%. So this tells me like, hey, it would probably be a good idea if you add like some compost or something to get your organic matter up. So that's what I've typically done. Now just a couple of basic things about the different parts of your soil. So pH for flowers, you want to be around probably 6.5. They're saying 6.2, but most flowers are going to grow around 6.5 is usually pretty good. So if your pH is too low, you can add limestone. Now, if your pH is too high, so it's too alkaline, then you can add a sulfur component to lower it. And don't be afraid to call or email these guys and ask them like, hey, I'm having trouble figuring this out on my soil, analysis. What would you recommend that I do? Nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium are the 3 biggest macronutrients that you need to be concerned with. And you'll see on fertilizer bags a number or 3 numbers, like a 10, 10, 10, 12, 12, 12. That's your NPK ratio. So it tells you how much nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium is in the fertilizer. And then calcium on down, these are all your micronutrients. You can add these individually if need be, or you can do what I do, and that's add like a mineral supplement once a year, and that usually works out pretty well. So like I said, if you don't get recommendations on what to add, that's the biggest problem I've seen people have depending on where they send their sample. Then just email, call, see if they have a calculator online where you can put in your results and what you need to be growing, and it'll tell you. But this is your vital information on what you need to add. So now that we have the analysis result, let's go on A&M's website to their calculator, and it will help me figure out what kind of fertilizers I need to add. All right, friends, so here we are at the Texas A&M AgriLife soil calculator, and this is the urban calculator, which goes off of per 1,000 square feet. They also have an ag calculator, which is per acre. So I think it just depends on the size of the area that you're wanting to look up. But most of us are going to have probably smaller areas that we're using. So I think the urban fertilizer calculator is better. And I will link this below the video so you can go straight to it. Normally you could put in your soil test values, but for some reason this isn't working right now and you don't necessarily need it. So we're just going to leave this blank. We're going to come over to the recommended nutrient rates, and this is what is on your soil analysis. Now, if your soil analysis did not come with this, then you need to contact the lab and speak to somebody and see if they can provide it for you. So mine said it was recommended to add 1.3 pounds of nitrogen per 1,000 square foot. It was added 1.8 pounds of phosphorus and 3 pounds of potassium per 1,000 square foot. Now down here, it'll give your recommended fertilizer ratio. So when you go look at fertilizer bags, you will see 3 numbers on them, and it's your NPK ratio, which is your nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. Now, I can tell you right now, you're not going to find a fertilizer with this exact ratio. That would be nice. So what you want to do is you can come down here, and you can put in the NPK of a fertilizer that you've looked up. So let's go over to the Tractor Supply website, which is where I have gotten my fertilizers in the past. I just typed in a search for fertilizers and stuff starts popping up. So just wherever you typically buy supplies, you can go look up online what kind of stuff they have. So let's just take this first one. It's an all-purpose 10-10-10. So NPK 10-10-10 has got equal amounts of all the nutrients. So let's go plug that in on the calculator. So It's got 10 nitrogen, 10 phosphorus, 10 potassium. So it's saying if you add 13 pounds of fertilizer for every 1,000 square feet, this is how much you're applying because it's 10%. So it says your nitrogen is adequately supplied, but you still need to add some phosphorus and potassium. So you can go add these in separately, and that's typically what I have done in the past. But you need 13 pounds per square foot. That could add up pretty quickly. So let's go see if we can find a fertilizer that has a little bit more. So this next one is a 12-12-12. So 12% of all the nutrients. So let's change it and let's see if perhaps we don't have to add quite as much fertilizer. Yeah, so here you go. Only 10.8 pounds of this fertilizer. So this would be cheaper to buy this fertilizer that has a little bit more of the nutrients in them. You're still applying the 1.3 pounds of each. You get enough nitrogen and you have to add some potassium and phosphorus here, but a little bit less. Now let's go pick a fertilizer that maybe has some different numbers in it. So let's go down. I'm going to plug in let me go find the pasture fertilizer because that is what I have used in the past. I think it's usually down here. There it is. So 1666. So a lot more nitrogen and potassium than phosphorus, which is really what I need in my area. So let's go plug this in, 16,616, and let's see what it does. So 16, 6, 16. Okay, so only 8 pounds of fertilizer per 1,000 square feet. It's applying a lot more nitrogen and potassium than phosphorus. My nitrogen will be adequately supplied by using this amount. I still need some additional phosphorus and potassium. So I'm needing less fertilizer because I have a lot more nitrogen and potassium in this fertilizer. So this might end up being cheaper. And then I can just add some extra phosphorus and potassium. So I think you can kind of play around with it as you find fertilizers, what's readily available, what, pricing you want to work with. But I will tell you in the past, this is what I used, is I went to Tractor Supply, I got this pasture fertilizer, and then I went on Amazon and just found some potash and phosphorus and just added them all together and spread them over my field. And I will link below the video my links for my fertilizer spreader as well as the additional amendments. I also add in a mineral amendment as well, and I usually just mix everything together and then spread it out. All right, so last step is I figured out, okay, I'm gonna go to Tractor Supply, get that pasture fertilizer. This is how much I need per 1,000 square feet. I need some phosphorus and potassium, which I know I can go get on Amazon. I have a field that's about 11,000 square feet. So I just need to multiply 8.1 times 11, and it'll get me how many pounds I need to buy and then spread out. So here we are, went and did some quick math. I need almost 90 pounds of kind of the basic fertilizer, 14.3, 18.7. So when I go buy the bags, depending on the size of the bags, this is how much I need to do total. And then I'm gonna go through and kind of try to evenly spread this out over the whole field. All right, so that's kind of it on how to take a soil sample, how to fill it out, what to get, how to interpret your results and figure out exactly what fertilizers or amendments you need to add to your soil. One quick note, most people will do a soil test on an established area once a year. A lot of times in the winter, that's just because, things are slower, but I think it just depends on when you're going to be planting. So here in the South, I'm growing stuff over the winter, and my slow time of planting and growing is actually at the end of the summer. So that's when I'm taking my soil test so that I can get everything fixed up in order to fall plant my spring crops. So, you know, give yourself, I would say, a good month before you're going to be planting to get your soil test, get your results back, figure out what all fertilizers and things you need, and then go, you know, actually amend everything. And the way that I do it, like I said, I will link below my spreader, but I go through and I add my fertilizers, and then I go through and add my lime, and then I top dress with compost, and I will just kind of lightly till it in just to mix it in the soil. And ideally, if I can do this right before it's gonna rain, even better. If not, I might put the sprinkler out there and try to water it in a little bit. It's not absolutely necessary, but that'll just kind of get it into the soil a little bit faster. Do you have to till it in? No, I think it just helps it develop a little bit faster. But if you are a no-till farm, then you don't necessarily need to. And on that note, you may consider doing a liquid fertilizer instead of a dry, but they tend to be a little more expensive. So I think you just have to figure that out on your own. But that's a basic overview. I am not an expert on soil analysis and macro and micronutrients and minerals. There is a lot that you can dive down and learn about all this stuff, but I have found this information I shared with you is pretty like the basics of what you need to do to be successful at growing flowers or vegetables, whatever you're gonna do. So if you have any questions, comment them below. I will do my best to get you an answer, but just remember, your local Ag Extension office is your friend. They are there to help you out, so don't be afraid to email them, call them, ask questions. So thank you guys for tuning in, and I will see you in my next video.